How much Spanish should you know before you hire a fluency coach? For 8 years, Accelerated Spanish has been the top choice of serious language learners pursuing fluency. We've worked intensely one-on-one with thousands of students pursuing Spanish fluency, and the testimonials speak for themselves. Spanish coaching works. But for students who have never been in Spanish coaching, there's an important question that keeps coming up again and again. Is it worth getting face-to-face coaching when you aren't even speaking Spanish yet? In other words, what's the value of talking with a native Spanish speaker right at the beginning of your journey? And I think that this question largely comes from some misunderstandings about the difference between conversation practice and actual coaching. It turns out that Spanish coaching is not all about practicing conversation. Instead, it's about something much more important, something that's important to get right from day one of your Spanish journey. In this video, we'll bust some myths about Spanish coaching. I'll go over what, in our experience, makes for a good Spanish teacher, and I'll describe what it is that an expert linguistic coach does with that face-to-face time. But first, I'll talk about why it's important to think about learning Spanish the same way you'd think about learning an instrument. Imagine you're just starting out playing the piano, and you've decided to hire one of the best piano instructors in your city to coach you. When you meet with that instructor once a week, what are you going to spend your time doing? Are you going to be simply playing your pieces for her beginning to end for the entire hour? Or maybe playing some duets together with her? Of course not. The best use of that time involves drilling down on your strengths and weaknesses, figuring out what are the most important things to work on, and getting specific guidance on the best ways to improve. There will be some time spent playing for your teacher, but only enough for the instructor to give you really good feedback. It would be a waste of time just to spend the whole hour playing repertoire. And Spanish is exactly the same thing. Unfortunately, there's a huge myth that the best way to become fluent is just to spend as much time as possible conversing with native Spanish speakers. But if you hire a coach, spending your weekly hour of coaching simply conversing would be as much of a waste of time as just sitting at the piano playing repertoire during a lesson. There's no denying that face-to-face time is essential for working your way toward fluency, which is why we place so much emphasis on face-to-face practice for all of our students. But most of that face time that a language student gets with their coach is not spent in simple conversation. Instead, it's spent getting really serious about the language, no matter what your level is, and giving you very specific instruction, pointers, and assignments based on all the strengths and weaknesses that your coach finds. And that's because any type of professional instruction is about digging in and working hard on the important elements of the skill that you're learning, not simply practicing together. And that kind of brings us to the point. If your goal is to be really good at the language, to make deep, personal connections in Spanish, then you need this type of instruction as early as possible. There's no reason to wait until you've gotten really good at the language before you hire a coach, just like it's not a good idea to wait until you're really good at the piano before you start working with a teacher. From the very foundations of your learning, you should be regularly working face-to-face at a deep level with a coach who's checking your form and guiding your steps. Of course, if you've already learned some Spanish, you may now be worried about the fact that you didn't get this type of instruction right at the beginning, but it's never too late to start. Sure, it's very likely that your coach is going to point out something fundamental that you need to work on that you didn't realize. Perhaps something in your pronunciation or pronoun use, something you never knew you were getting wrong. Just like a music teacher might correct your posture or your fingerings or help you determine which foundational scales and arpeggios are likely to get you to the next level the most quickly. These are all things to get corrected as soon as possible. And yes, it may seem like that's not the fun stuff. It feels more attractive just to go straight to practicing your favorite repertoire or to practicing conversing on your favorite topics. But if you're serious about the skill that you're learning, you know how important it is to give your best efforts to those exercises that are fundamental to mastering the skill until it's second nature. The bottom line is, if you're serious about being really good at Spanish and communicating in a deep, personal way so that you can truly relate to the native speakers in your life, coaching is essential right at the beginning of your language learning journey or as early as possible. Starting off with the support of a good coach is at least as important as getting conversation practice later on. So now the question is, what does that coaching actually look like at the beginning of your language learning journey? What does a good language instructor do when you aren't yet ready for conversation, but are just building your grammatical foundation so that you can start communicating like a native speaker? Let's take a peek behind the scenes. I'll show you the top 2 elements of good Spanish coaching, including the secret ingredient that every good coach brings to the table, as well as the special magic that makes coaching more valuable than any other type of learning. So first, what is it that separates the best Spanish coaches in the world from just the average Spanish conversation tutor that you might work with? To answer that, let's try to visualize a kind of odd scenario. How weird would it be to walk into a piano lesson eager to improve your skills, only to hear your instructor ask, "So, what do you think you need to improve this week?" If your coach is someone who really knows what they're doing, they'll be able to determine what you need to work on within minutes. They're not going to ask you what to work on, they'll start digging in and figuring it out right away. Whether your meeting starts with a short Spanish conversation, or you have absolutely nothing to say in Spanish and your instructor has to ask you questions about your current grasp of the language, your very first coaching session will be one of the most productive hours you've ever spent on Spanish. Your coach will pinpoint exactly where you are and what your most important steps are to get to the next level toward fluency. Better still, as you work with the coach over time, she'll be able to give you even more specific, personal guidance based on knowing your strengths and weaknesses personally, whether in grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, or comprehension. Every single week, your coach will be able to tell you exactly what to work on, both during the session, face-to-face, and on your own throughout the next week. And the reason that this works so well is not because your coach is making it up as she goes. Instead, it's because a skilled instructor has a system for learning the language, a system that she's used time and time again with all the students that she's coached towards fluency. A good coach has a system that she knows works. See, as much as we want language learning to be completely personal, an enormous amount of the process of learning a language really comes down to the same refined processes that apply to everyone. This is true of piano instruction as well. Music lessons aren't just lackadaisical practice sessions that the instructor makes up as she goes along. Whether you're learning jazz improvisation, pop ballads, or Ravel piano suites, there are a series of steps for building up your skills from the ground to where you want to be. Reaching your skills requires a roadmap, and a good instructor is the best navigator you could ask for, someone who has the roadmap and has guided many people like you to the skills of their dreams. But wait a second, the roadmap can't be the same for everyone, can it? Just because a specific system has brought one particular person from zero to achieving their dreams, does that mean that if you follow the exact same steps, it'll work for you as well? No, it doesn't. The fact is that every learner is a unique individual, and we all have different specific quirks and needs. And that brings us to the second reason that every learner should get an experienced coach. They will customize the map for you specifically. See, when you meet with a good coach face to face, what they're going to do with that time from the very beginning is not simply recite to you the steps of their grand step-by-step formula for fluency. Instead, from day one, they'll be learning as much from you as you learn from them in order to refine and customize the map that they're leading you along. Spanish coaching is a two-way conversation. And I'm not just talking about conversation practice. I'm talking about a high-level back and forth about how to get from where you are to having good conversations in Spanish. If you want to communicate deeply and personally with your Spanish-speaking loved ones, then you'll do whatever it takes to get to the next level, no matter where you currently are. And with a language coach as your navigator, you'll constantly have specific instruction, pointers, and assignments based on all the strengths and weaknesses that you currently have. Your coach will always be able to figure out exactly where you are on the map, tweak the map based on that information, and put you on the most direct path to your fluency goals immediately. As a concrete example, let's say that you're still struggling with ser and estar after months of working on these verbs. This is very normal for anyone learning Spanish, but it's an important thing to get right because using the wrong verb can easily confuse the whole meaning of what you're trying to convey, especially in personal, nuanced conversations. In this scenario, a good language coach will spot the types of mistakes that you're making with these verbs, choose a topic that's important to you, and help you practice choosing ser or estar in specific contexts within that topic. Let's say, for example, you're eager to talk with your mother-in-law about cooking. Your coach might ask you which verb you'd use in the sentence example, the stove is hot, which would be estar, versus what I'm cooking is a hot dish, which would be ser. Every learner is different and in a different place. Everybody has different objectives. And of course, that's why simply learning from a one-size-fits-all curriculum isn't as effective as coaching. The best personalized instruction is geared toward your personal goals, and it has you recalibrate constantly based on what your current strengths and weaknesses are in relation to those goals. A coach is the best person to see what's working for you, and more importantly, what's not working, and to customize your learning based on what will sharpen you the fastest. If you don't yet have a Spanish coach, check out the link in the description for info on what Accelerated Spanish has to offer. And of course, make sure to subscribe to this channel for more very practical tips on how to make your study as productive as possible so that you can achieve Spanish fluency faster than ever.